afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Small family businesses are a big part of Vermont, both economically and culturally. For those businesses to survive, there has to be a transfer of ownership from time to time. For the past several years, Across the Fence has documented a series of farm transactions across Vermont. Many of the stories we've shared have involved farm successions from parents to children. For today's program, Keith Silva found a farm in the Northeast Kingdom where preparation met opportunity, and the result is a farming legacy that can continue for years to come.
There's been a farm on this spot on Route 100 in Westfield for over a century.
I was 13 years old when my parents bought this farm in 1963. I like mine and she likes hers, so we never have to worry about who's using which one.
Jake and Pauline Coocher bought the farm from Jake's parents in 1970. Pauline has fond memories of those early days.
I would feed the hay and bed the cows, so I would do that type of stuff. And then as the kids got older, they started doing that. Or as I was getting more kids, it was more my job in the house. I'm happy where I am.
The farm is 425 acres. They milk about 70 cows and have been certified organic since 2007. The maple operation numbers 7,500 taps. All the syrup that's produced is sold retail, either at the shop or on the internet. The Coochers also operate a bed and breakfast and sell organic beef. In addition to the business they built over their 47-year marriage, the Coochers are proud to have raised 6 children here. Their family has grown to include 11 grandchildren. Even though they loved the farm growing up, none of the kids chose to follow in their parents' footsteps.
None of them really wanted to farm. We told them growing up, follow your dreams. We followed ours, and we're still following them. So we don't have any, ill feelings about that. We encourage them, and they're all doing very well. They all have good college educations and good jobs. So yeah, over time, we talked with our kids, who certainly would have, been excited if some had decided to do that, but they've chosen other careers, and so we're doing something different now for, looking towards the future.
Oh, I've always been interested in dairy farming. My mom and dad were never dairy farmers. I didn't grow up on a dairy farm. My dad worked.
Dave Myers came to work for the Coochers in 2010. Before too long, Jake and Pauline knew that Dave was more than the average employee.
We thought, okay, this is it, and he's doing it from the heart, just like Jake and I did at the beginning, and he's young and he wants to farm, and he's got that want to.
He comes with youth and with energy. I can see myself 40 years ago. That's our age difference, is 40 years. And, to me, that's a breath of fresh air. At 66, I don't quite have the drive. I still got the drive in my mind. When I get up every morning, I still feel 18 for about 10 minutes. And then in reality, the breath of fresh air that youth brings to an organization is something that's immeasurable.
Even though his children weren't interested in being farmers, Jake got a sense that Dave was. And as it turns out, Jake was right.
One night I was bedding the barn and Jake came in and asked me what I planned on doing for the rest of my life, and I said, well, you're kind of looking at it. And here we are.
We felt very fortunate that we had an employee in Dave Myers who had good management skills and had a desire to farm. And so, in visiting about that situation, Dave wanted to farm, and we offered him the opportunity to farm with us and become a partner, and it was a great thing.
A year and a half after their conversation in the barn, Myers and the Coochers decided to go into partnership and form Missisquoi Valley Farm, which started on January 1st, 2013.
We formed an LLC, so we basically carved out the maple and kept that separate, and we put the dairy business in an LLC. We sold Dave a 25% interest in the dairy part of our business, and we're financing that for him. So the first piece, that 25%, is a 7-year process. We're now in year 4 of that process. And when we finish that 7 years, he will actually outright own 25% of the cattle and the equipment. And at that point, he'll have enough equity to either go to the bank and purchase the rest, or we might consider financing the rest for him. And at that point, we'll be 69 years old, so we'll be ready to sell him the other 75%.
when I was growing up, and when I was 22, I told my grandmother, I said, by the time I'm 25, I'm gonna have my own farm. And she said, well, you gotta set a goal for yourself. And she said, that's half the battle won right there, Dave. And I don't own it, but I'm damn close. And I'll be probably 27 by the time I'm fully in charge, and that's not too shabby still. But there's not, I mean, even half of my friends that are my age don't have nothing, and they don't have no business.
I'm guessing about 5 loads out of that piece.
That's exactly what I was thinking
Yeah,
yesterday when
we'll
I was
see.
mowing it.
The success of the partnership will depend on many factors, from milk prices to increasing environmental regulations. One thing Myers and Coocher may have going for them is they're not related.
I think there's been a big advantage there. Just the simple fact that I'm not his kid and I'm not his grandson, to where, oh, yeah, we'll figure this out later, Dave. We'll do this, we'll do that. We discuss everything in fine detail.
I think my intention would be the same if it was a son or a daughter that was in business with us, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure, if it's easier with someone who's not actually a family member. I'm just saying it's going pretty well.
There are a lot of opportunities out there where farmers are selling out because they haven't found somebody that they thought could take over the operation.
Bob Parsons is an agricultural economist with University of Vermont Extension. He leads UVM's Farm Transfer program.
All too often in family transitions, we assume some things will work out and we kind of brush over some things because it's family and we'll handle that when we get to it. When you're dealing with somebody that is totally outside of the family, they're going to discuss all the business arrangements. Jake is going to discuss how I'm going to get paid, when I'm going to get paid, and Dave needs to know, what am I going to get paid for my labor, and what will I own, and when will I own it, and what happens if we break up and I find an opportunity somewhere else, or we just find that we don't get along as well as we thought we would. Outside people will discuss the details because this is a business arrangement and they're not confined by family and personal feelings. If this isn't going to work business-wise, we ain't doing it. But all too often with a family, yes, we'll make it work. And families then later run into some problems.
When they come, they look at the birth dates.
Yeah.
Coocher and Myers credit communication, shared values, and respect for one another as being key factors to their partnership.
I have the mentorship of somebody who has done this before and has done it for 40 some odd years. Just to get that mentorship in farming is hands down, you can't ask for any better thing out there. Because, if I don't know it, Jake 9 times out of 10 knows it because he's seen it, he's done it. That right there is like an encyclopedia to have at hand.
One of the things that I try to do as the older one in this partnership is to realize that to get from point A to point B isn't always the same route. I might do something one way, Dave might have another idea. I try to be as open as I can to that, and whether it's Dave and I or somebody else trying to do things, I think it's extremely important for the older generation to give some opportunity for the younger generation to kind of bring in their ideas, and it's interesting sometimes. Yeah, why didn't I think of that before? Things still get done, and be open to that.
The partnership agreement contains a dissolution clause, so if anything happens to any of the members, each one is protected. No one wants to talk about the inevitable, but Pauline knows it's just good business.
We talk about our death because it's going to eventually happen to all of us, and I need to know what to do with this place if he goes first. If I go first, then we talked about different things there. So we need to talk about how we are going to transition ourselves, into this. And some people don't want to talk about it, but it's something that we have to. And talking about things of the farm is not a problem.
Dave's advice for someone his age, or for that matter, Jake's age, looking to get into partnership, is to talk and be ready to work.
Talking to people's free. It doesn't cost you nothing. And that's what I've always been taught when I was working at different farms. They say, ask a million questions, it's all free advice. And I took that to full advantage, because you never know unless you ask somebody. But I'm more bound and determined and headstrong that I'm gonna make this work, and that's what you gotta be, fireman. I mean, you gotta have self-motivation, and you gotta sit there and say, I'm gonna make this work.
Pauline is ready to retire, but Jake, not so much. They want to keep the maple business and the bed and breakfast going, for now. The partnership has put the farm's legacy in good hands. And for Jake, that's what it's all about.
What were our options? Have a herd dispersal and have an empty barn? Or see some young person who's got a bunch of drive and the ability get established here and thrive. You know, what more can you ask for? I mean, it'd be great when I'm in my 80s to drive by here and say, wow, look, I used to farm there. Isn't that neat?
There's been a farm on this spot on Route 100 in Westfield for over a century. And thanks to the care and foresight of the current and future owners, there will be for years to come. In Westfield, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, thanks, Keith. Joining me now is UVM Extension agriculture economist Bob Parsons. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Judy.
Now, you've worked with farm families around New England on the issue related to transferring the farm. How typical is the situation we just saw?
One thing that's typical is the aging farmer that's owning the farm. What is non-typical is that they're passing it on to somebody who isn't even related to them. This is an employee, so they've worked out, but this is a couple that's looking ahead and saying, okay, our kids aren't interested in the dairy, but it still fits in, and they aren't ready to quit yet, but it's still too much for them to handle. They had a very enterprising young herdsman, and they thought they could work out, and they did work out an LLC agreement.
It really does take the right person, though.
It takes the right person on both sides and lots of communication. As Jock has said to themselves, you have to communicate everything that you're doing. And that's a very key to it.
Is it easier because it's a non-family situation?
You know, in some ways it is, because people ask the questions that they don't ask in a family discussion, because maybe you go, well, the parents will say, well, we'll work that out. And it leaves some questions open as to who's going to get paid, when they're going to be owning, what they're going to own at what period of time. And if you're going into a business agreement with someone you don't know, you goes, well, I don't know how much I trust this person. It's not dad or mom
Get it in
or
writing.
the kids. We're going to get this thing in writing, and we're going to do it right, because on the other hand, they also want to know, both sides want to know the answers to these same questions. And so you tend to talk about things that you don't talk about in a family discussion many times. You know, what do we do when mom and dad get old and they live in the house? You know, okay. And this discussion is, you know, it was a 7-year agreement, but they both knew what would happen if it broke up at any point along the agreement, and they know what's going to happen then at the end of 7 years.
In general, what happens if a farm owner avoids or postpones that decision?
Well, you know, it's the old saying that, you know, failing to plan is planning to fail. And what happens too often is that when someone doesn't make plans, you'll hear something about somebody having a health problem and things start going downhill. They can't find adequate help. It may be just a temporary health problem, or they just can't handle the thing anymore. They can't find good labor, meaning they can't find someone that works as hard as they do. Mm-hmm. And it usually brings about probably a premature termination decision, where maybe a family just says we can't do the work anymore and might have to just put the herd up for sale at the wrong time. And, you have to, we all get older. And, as I'm even finding out myself, you have to make some plans of what you're going to be doing in the future. And getting this point across the farms is, it's not etching out a plan when you're 40 that's etched in stone, mm-hmm. but you're thinking about, okay, how long do I want to milk cows? When do I want to collect Social Security? Where's my income going to come in? And how do we phase somebody in? Because here again, if you're going to phase the farm over to someone else, is there enough income there? And Coocher's here was, they had foresight a number of years ago to make sure that they had enough income there for 2 families there.
Now, you run workshops. There'll be some coming up?
Yes, we haven't planned any yet, but we plan to have some probably through January through March in 2 or 3 locations across the state. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we see these workshops that people come 2 or 3 times before they finally decide what they want to do, because there's some very big decisions. And it involves more than just one person. It involves the family, those off the farm, those on the farm, those that are doing the farm work. How are we going to handle everyone? It's a big deal. But if you don't think about it, it just doesn't fall by itself.
Okay, well, we've got a website if you're interested in more information. It's uvm.edu/farm transfer. The site has information on topics like taxes, estate planning, and other videos as well. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yes, and this video here will be on that website here very shortly, too.
All right, thanks so much. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.